You cannot measure all of life through the same metric. And that's sometimes what we do with art and business. So let's get into it. But before we do, this video is a little bit more for the people who have written a little bit, who have painted a little bit. They're not complete beginners either, because you've started and you've done your homework, which is a round of applause, or because you are actually taking this course and you're trying to get even better at something you're already quite good at. And I also want this course to be something you can always get back to once you've written that first book, once you've done the painting, the architecture, whatever the thing is, and you want to refresh again. I think there's always two types of people who take a course like this. The people who like free things, no. The people who are just starting out, who really need that push, and the people who have started already, who have done something, but they're like, I want to get better at this thing. I want to understand it better. I want to improve the skill I already have. So this is more for those people, but you can always, of course, also watch this. But if you are a complete beginner, please start with part 1 and work your way through this and do all of the homeworks, because I really think this course can change your art trajectory. I don't know where that accent came from in the last word, but okay. Art and metrics, that's what we're talking about in business. Maybe I'll clip in the video I'm talking about, but there's this poet who was talking about writer's block, and he's like, I never get it, because I'm not a production machine. I am not producing in that capacity. It's not part of me being like 5 poems a day. He didn't say that part, but that's what I added in. And it's so true. I've never had writer's block because I've also never measured writing through the lens of a factory, through the lens of a business even, which we've talked about this before. There needs to be a little bit of business in art, in the sense of you have to have deadlines and all that stuff. I mentioned that in a previous video, so I'm not going to touch on it too much. But in the actual act of producing, there should not be a creating, more likely. Exactly, that is the contrast. Creating and producing. Producing is what Amazon does. Creating is what artists do. We need both. I love Amazon. But you cannot measure it the same way. You don't do this in any category of life. In any other category of life. For example, if someone's in prison, this is a gnarly example, but I'm going to use it. If someone's in prison, you're not like, oh, when are you graduating? You're like, when are you leaving? And when someone's graduating high school, you're like, oh, when you're graduating, you're not like, when are you leaving? Because they're leaving the building, they're done with the thing they're supposed to do in the building, but very different. Now, these are even starker contrasts, but you need, as a writer, I love words, and you need to be careful what words you use and how you put language around what you do. So you're like, okay, but then how do I mend the world of productivity and art? You kind of don't and do. You have a deadline, which I've touched on before. Please watch that video. It is so incredibly important. I've written 3 books, by the way, so if you're like, why am I listening to this girl? I've written 3 books. But you've given yourself room to show up every day. So I would say show up every day, show up as many days a week as you have kind of carved out in your week, and then see what you do. You can always delete and erase and start a new page. Sometimes if you write a shitty piece of paper, if you write a shitty paragraph, that does not make you a shitty writer. If you make a bad sculpture, that doesn't make you a bad sculpturer. Like, you can make bad things, and you should never set out to make bad things, but you should set out to try. To try and try and try again. But then there are those days, which is mainly what this video is about, where you don't want to try, you're done trying, you're like, I don't want to try, I'm so out of love with this art almost. Which, if you're a beginner, that might not happen soon at all. And I think this is an interesting thing with art. It is like love, a lot. There's so many overlaps between love and art, because you don't get sick of it until very late, and then you're like, oh my god. Like, I think there was a study done, the dopamine of love or whatever the dopamine is called, it stays for like the first 5-6 months. With art, it's even longer. But then when that dopamine drops, when the just emotion of it drops, you think, oh my god, I don't love this. You do. But you've never relied on emotions as long as you've relied on emotions with this thing. And so it is, you're like, okay, well, if the emotion's gone, then that's it. No, it's not. You've just gotten used to it. So that's one part. And the other part is, you're not a production machine. And a poet was talking about this, as I said earlier. You shouldn't measure yourself like that. But what do you do then? He says he thinks. He's like, I write, and if I can't write, I think. And I think that should be kind of the way you approach it. It doesn't have to be thinking. I'm not just saying like don't think, but it can be, I paint. If I don't paint, and if I cannot think of something, I go for a walk. I look at the scenery without a podcast on. You have to figure out what your thinking is in your art form. I'll give you some examples. So for painting, I would say take a walk. For sculpture, I would say maybe trace your body. Like, get a really huge piece of paper and trace your body and try to recreate yourself in the way you see yourself. In the way it feels, not in the way it looks. So you trace it, so you have like a roundabout idea, but then you put the face together, not in the, I take a picture, this is my face, okay, let me do it. But in the, this is how my face feels. Does that make sense? I think that would be really cool. Or you do that with something else. A book you like, whatever. With writing, I would say thinking. Thinking without sound. Have 20 minutes where you just have silence. And you look up at the sky, preferably the actual sky and not a concrete ceiling. And what other art forms are there? With music, silence, individual instruments, a cappella pieces, like stripped down music. And with singing as well, a cappella pieces. Especially singing is an interesting thing because, except all the art forms, singing is one where you sometimes want to, but you can't because it's a muscle. And it's a relatively sensitive muscle. And so you're just gonna have to like listen to stuff, understand how they do that, maybe write down all the individual notes for a run. And understand, if you like this art form, you will have the rest of your life to do it. So even if you're 40, you at least have another 40, 30 years to do this art form. So there is no rush. There is no, I need to produce. No, it is, you want to produce nothing. You want to create something. I hope this helped. I hope this is giving you some grace, as well as giving you some motivation and insight on how to spark that back up. And if all of that still doesn't work, give yourself a break. I think art holidays are super important. I think it's interesting the order I'm doing all of this, because the smartest way to do it would be to put it at the end. But I think I want everyone from different blocks of art and different timelines of when they started art to be able to get something out of this course. And I think this is super important, to also take breaks, to love it again. I hope that helped. Go check out everything in the description, my poetry book, my fiction book, my TikTok where you tag me in a TikTok for your homework, and my Spotify. I have a new podcast episode out here every Monday and on Spotify every Friday. So, what's the homework? You create a writer's block routine. And you're like, I'm not a writer. Then a painter's block routine, whatever the block can be. And it's even better if you're not actually blocked. The best time to figure out what to do when you're sad is when you're happy. Because when you then already are sad, you're like, I don't want to do anything. But when you're not sad yet, it's much easier to figure that out. So, tag me in that if you want to share it. If not, keep it to yourself. It's also just great that you're doing all of these homeworks, and I do think I'm really excited to see everyone's end product. Sorry, I used the wrong word. End creation. Thank you for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next Saturday, and I post tons of things everywhere in between.